This is Deborah Atkinson, and you're listening to Flipping 50, where I address your top questions and things you struggle with most so you can have more energy and less decision fatigue about what to eat, how to move, and you can change your thoughts to flip 50 with the life and energy you love in this second half. And from time to time, I bring on one of our Flipping 50 community members, and that's exactly what I'm doing today. I'm so excited to introduce you to Katherine Thomas, who's 61. She is a retired ultrasonographer. She's been living for 6 years in southern Mexico, which is in itself an adventure we could talk about. But it was just almost 2 days ago, I think it was, she connected with me again on Facebook and said, this is kind of my anniversary. It was a year ago to that I really got serious about doing my first triathlon. And I just wanted to touch base. Another way you actually may feel like you know her a bit is Flipping 50 episode 27. It was the first episode of the season 3, actually answered one of Katherine's questions. So I always feel like I'm actually with her in the room when I'm doing one of those episodes. So Katherine, it's so great to have you live.
Thanks, Deborah. It's great to be on with you. Such an honor for me, actually.
Well, I can't wait to dive into this and to unpack. So I want to really clarify for everybody. So you're a retired ultrasonographer. You've been living for 6 years in southern Mexico, but where before?
Before that, actually, we spent 4 years in Belize and enjoyed that. Before that, we were in the United States, and I'm married to a retired Navy man, so we were from just about everywhere. You know, people ask me, where are you from? And it's like, well, recently or originally? So yeah, so we left the States, we left Mississippi and moved to Central America. Yeah.
Very cool. So talk to me a little bit about what I know of you is that you committed to doing your first triathlon. And I do remember, I think we jumped on Skype and we talked about training and your early questions about getting started. First of all, what inspired that?
Oh, I had a friend who, well, let me take one step before that. I had been a smoker for 45 years, and I made the decision to quit smoking and knew I had to change everything, my routine and everything, if I was going to really kick that forever. And so that prompted me, instead of getting up with coffee and cigarettes, I jumped on my old Huffy bicycle and started bicycling. Then fast forward, almost a year, and a friend of mine came up to an area where I lived and was competing in a triathlon in the Olympic distance. And so I went down to watch her and was just really amazed. It was really, truly my first experience watching a triathlon. And so that prompted me to think, I'm really feeling a lot healthier these days. I wonder if I could even fathom doing one of these triathlons. And not long after that, I made the commitment, I'm going to do this. I've got to do this for myself.
So cool. So at that point, when you decided and you were feeling healthier, tell me about that. Was that just because you'd given up the smoking and begun a little bit of exercise? Where was your exercise level at that point?
Okay. In searching, of course, I found you on the internet, and I had started doing exercises, strength exercises. I really enjoyed what you talked about regarding building bone strength and having, looking at exercise and health from the perspective of, now that we're past the age of 50, we've got to kind of address this a little differently. So your insights really played a big part in me getting on the right path in training. And I also joined a gym. So utilizing your videos at home, plus I would ride in the morning and then go to the gym. And all of these activities were to accommodate triggers to stay away from smoking. So that's kind of where I got on the ball of doing a lot of strength training and more exercise beyond just the bike.
So good. So I can't go on without asking, did you do that by yourself, the quitting smoking and the substituting other triggers and cues, or did you have help?
No, actually, I seriously woke up one morning and I said, this is it. I'm going to get on my bike. And it was complete willpower. Now there was a mentality behind that. I had a few months before that lost a good friend of mine. She died of COPD, and I can, that really struck a nerve with me. And I knew that if I did not do something, that I was going to end up living sick, and that was something I vowed I would never do. So willpower and substituting any trigger with exercise. Oh, the other thing which you taught me was regarding nutrition. I really had to reduce foods that triggered the desire to smoke, and sugar was a big one. Sugar was a big one. So started doing more nutrition, adding nutrition into my lifestyle, so that helped as well. But no chemicals, no hypnosis. Of course, I've tried several times over the years to quit smoking using all kinds of other methods, but this was just, I had to get healthier. That was it.
So how long has it been since your last cigarette?
3 years.
Wow. Do you want one? Do you ever want one?
Nope. No, not anymore. There were periods of time where I would smell it and it would be a little bit appealing, but at this point, no. And I can't even remember. I was talking to my kids about this actually, because they've all quit too. And one of them had said, I really love my clothes not smelling like smoke, or, talking about the things that the positives of not smoking. And I don't even remember any of that anymore. To me, I just feel good. I just feel healthy.
So good. All right. So let's talk a little bit about your triathlon journey. Well, and first of all, your finish line. So we'll start backwards. When was the triathlon, the first one?
September 9th.
Or the one you were really, okay, September 9th. And that was a sprint?
It was a sprint distance, yes.
And you know what, for listeners, we should tell them what your distances were so that they understand what a sprint distance is.
Right, 750-meter swim, and then a 20-kilometer bike and a 5K run.
Nice. And which of those was hardest?
The run, absolutely.
Was it? Okay. Simply because it followed the other two, or is running kind of always the more challenging?
I have never been a runner. I've always hated running. And when I
strong word, Katherine.
I'm telling you, I did. I hated running. And I did some power walking in my life, but never running. And when I committed to doing a triathlon, I mentally went into it saying, I'm probably not going to run. I'm going to do a power walk. When it comes to that part of it, I'm going to do a power walk. And I was good with that mentally. But once I got involved with my local coach here, that mindset had to go completely out of the picture, because he wasn't going to let me do any kind of walking. There's no walking in triathlon. We run in triathlon.
Okay. All right then. So talk about your journey. Were you a good swimmer? Was that foreign?
No, I've always been a swimmer or been
Good.
recreationally a swimmer. Never really learned how to do the crawl effectively. So that was completely new for me. And learning the stroke, improving my stroke, um, being able to have the stamina and the skill. When I first started in the pool getting ready for this triathlon, and that was only in April of this year. So I only had 5 months before the triathlon. I could swim 25 meters to the other end of the pool, and then I was exhausted. I was out of breath. So I've come huge leaps and bounds, and I amaze myself every day when I think about where I started 6 months ago and where I am now. So, yeah, the swim was a whole new learning curve, even though I always felt like I had been a swimmer.
Well, talk to me about, was there another obstacle there with swimming? So when you were training, you were in a pool. Was the triathlon in a pool or in open water?
No, the triathlon was in open water, and
Yeah.
I know because I had been a scuba instructor, I didn't really think that was going to be a big deal, but it was. It really, really was. And so, believe it or not, 2 weeks before the triathlon, Coach and I went down to the bay, and he put buoys out and got in his kayak, and I got in the water. He wanted to get some timings on me to see, how I would do. And when he said go, I immediately had this little panic attack. I don't know
Yeah.
why. I started swimming, and I felt like I was out of breath, and I had to slow down, and it was horrible. When I got back to his kayak, I was like, what just happened? And he said, this is absolutely normal. Don't panic. Everyone goes through this. So it's very, very different. And you have to, triathlon is as much physical as it is mental. And I know you know that from your Ironman experience, and you absolutely inspire me to the ends of the earth. But it's a lot mental because you are in the water with all these people, and they all want to be first. And I remember Coach telling me, let them go ahead of you. You don't have to be in the front right out of the start. Pace yourself, get out on the side, let those nuts kick each other and battle for the forefront. And this is your first triathlon. This is your time to experience a triathlon. We'll work on putting you out front later.
Good advice. Great advice. I have to share a story though, so you don't feel so badly. One of my prior guests, Susan McNamee, has been on a couple of times, and she tells the story that before she even registered for her first Ironman, she couldn't swim. So she actually she registered, and then just to let you know, listeners, an Ironman distance is swimming 2.4 miles in open water. So not only the hurdle of getting to be swimming, however, then the fear of the open water and getting used to that is kind of the next thing. And I don't know that maybe they do, but I don't know that I can say that I will always now be comfortable in open water. It's kind of a new experience every time. Is a little different. So she swam, I think, kayak to kayak the entire first Ironman she did. And I think she got out with like 20 seconds to spare. That means she was in the water 2 hours and 40 minutes.
Wow.
Yeah, but she did it, right? So it's kind of like graduation. Nobody turns around and says, what grade did you get in algebra?
Exactly.
They just know you have the diploma, right?
Exactly. And it's when, just talking about the swim, when I did the triathlon, this was very interesting. Coach had told me, do not hesitate to swim the breaststroke if you need it to rest, if you need it to get your bearings for sighting. But just make sure you're moving forward. Don't, stop. Keep going. So I started out in the breaststroke just to get my bearings on the first buoy. And when I got around that first buoy, Deborah, there was a rainbow in the sky. And I looked at that and I went, oh my gosh, this is like a, answered prayer or a promise or something that it's all going to be okay. And for some reason that I just got this burst of energy at that point, and I went into the crawl and I start passing these men that had started before me, 10 minutes before the women. And when I got out of the water, I knew that my best time prior to the triathlon, my best time was 24 minutes. And the maximum they want you to do it in is 25. So I always knew I'd be cutting it close, or I might have to make it up on the bike or whatever. And when I got out of the water and ran down the pier, I remember hearing my coach say, good time, good time. And I looked at my Garmin, it was 22 minutes. And I thought, I've never swam it in 22 minutes. So all of the adrenaline from actually being in the race lends a lot to performance. And so, yeah, that was quite exciting.
So exciting. So how about the bike, your experience with the bike? You mentioned riding the Huffy at first, so I'm guessing you've upgraded.
That, I tell you what, I started out on my little Huffy 1-speed basket on the front rear view mirror, and I finally got to a point to where I was riding far enough on this particular route where I was coming into contact with some very serious cyclists and who ride on the waterfront road every day. And of course they're on their, expensive road bikes and whizzing by me. And I just kept saying, okay, if I get good enough, I'm going to get myself a better bike. And then of course, when I committed to the triathlon, I had already purchased a bike with gears, but it was more like a mountain bike. So it really wasn't going to be appropriate for the triathlon. And my coach is like, well, we can work with this one until you can afford a better bike, but you've got to have a better bike for triathlon. And by the time I found the bike I needed, it was a secondhand bike, but it had triathlon experience. So I felt good about the fact I was buying a bike that had triathlon experience. And of course, once I got on that, I couldn't believe how much faster I could go, and I could actually improve my form. And you wouldn't really think that there is a form to bicycling, but there is. And being able to sit on the saddle that long, and there's all kinds of things you learn about your body when you start doing a lot of bicycling, things that ache that never ached before. And
that sitting on a 2x4 feeling is very special. Yes.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
So then there's also, so it's not just the swim and the bike and the run. There's that one follows the other. So it changes the game. It's not like just the same feel as going out for a bike. How did you do when you started putting them together in training? We call that doing brick workouts, doing a swim to bike or bike to run. How did that feel?
Yes. Actually, the coach, Kim was very good about putting me in situations where it's kind of like doing a taste testing, where he would have me do these small incremental bricks and then build to a full brick. And so one of them was riding my bike a certain distance, and then riding it to the track, getting, like maybe I would go 5 kilometers and stop at the track, and I would run, a distance around the track, and then get back on the bike and ride it again, and then get off the bike and run. And I like 4 different segments of that. And that, you don't think that there's going to be any kind of adjustment, but that going from bike to run is probably the hardest transition there is for me, because when you come out of the water, you almost feel energized, and so you get to your bike and you put your helmet on and you jump on your bike and you go, and you're riding and riding. And when you come back and you get off that bike, your legs feel, I don't know if this happens for you, but they felt like they weighed 100 pounds. There's a real heaviness, and it's almost like needing to get your land legs under you to be able to actually get into a run. So doing those bricks in training are critical to being prepared for that in the triathlon. So my favorite is swimming to bike. Those bricks are fun. Bike to run, that's not as fun as the other.
Little challenging. I used to, I think it changes with the length of triathlon you're doing. I do remember when I first was doing my first, second, maybe Ironman distance, I actually looked forward to getting off because I wanted to stretch my legs so badly. I just wanted off that bike and never to see it again, for a while. But it felt good, and in part, like you said, it's as mental as physical. And training yourself to look forward to the run when you're on the bike, I think is a big part of doing those bricks back to back. I love that.
Sure.
So let's talk a little bit about nutrition and how much that changed for you. And then how did it change in your household?
Oh, yes. Well, I believe you and I had spoken about this because of episode, 27? I was asking you to answer the question, what should I change nutritionally if I am training for a triathlon? What do endurance sports do to your requirements for nutrition? And your episode was just right on target. Prior to that, I had gone on a keto diet. And I had told you, I'm on a keto diet, and that eliminates, carbohydrates down to a very small amount per day. And as I got closer to the triathlon, and because of the episode that you had done, I reintroduced carbohydrates into my diet, specifically for the good carbohydrates, because I found that I really needed to be sure that I wasn't depleting my body completely of carbohydrates. You just can't do endurance stuff without it. You can't. I know there's some athletes that say they can, but not me. Not me. So,
did you feel better reintroducing them?
Yes, as long as there were a lot of carbohydrates that I had eliminated through keto that I really missed, and I really enjoyed putting them back in. Things like carrots and rices, and even the occasional splurge with bread. That I love.
She said it. She said the word. I know.
but yes, and I actually was training better fruits that yield to better performance in your muscles, like your banana and those types of fruits. Berries had been pretty much all I was eating on keto, but reintroducing things like banana and melon and those types of fruits were a huge benefit for me. And I noticed the difference in my muscle performance as a result.
Awesome. So what's next?
Well, I had signed up for a second triathlon that was supposed to take place at the end of October. So it would have been about a month and a half after the first triathlon, with the goal that I was going to do better times. You know, I did come in under the maximum time limit, and as funny as it is, and because I was the only woman over 60 in my category, I actually got first place. But I wanted better times. I wanted more competitive times. So the goal of the second triathlon was to, in fact, improve my times. Well, they had to cancel that triathlon, and I was so disappointed. So in the meantime, there's a lot of athletic events right around where I live, which is I'm so blessed by. And so there are oftentimes bike races and a lot of 10K, 5K, 21K runs. So I've supplemented, not having a triathlon to train for by training for these smaller events and just continuing with improving my times. And I'm still the only 60 plus woman in the area competing. So I've got to find some competition.
Which is so good. I love that. So you're kind of blazing a trail. So that brings me to this question. So we've got listeners out there who maybe also 61, they may be older, or they may be younger, thinking, I'm too old, or that ship has sailed. What do you have to say to that?
Oh my gosh, not at all. Not at all. And please never let that stop you. If you've watched an event and you thought, how cool would it be to be able to do that? You can. And it only takes putting one foot in front of the other. And you're not going to do it all overnight. And it's not going to just be, this magic wand thing. But you're just going to start slow and start small. And like I said, when I started on my little Huffy bicycle, I could only go around the block. And then I went 3 blocks, and then I went 6 blocks, and then I was doing 2 kilometers, and then I was doing 3 kilometers. So little by little, and as long as you feel good doing it, you'll get better. And you'll look back, even like me, 6 months later, look back behind you and look at the times that you were doing it at, or look at the distances you were doing at and say, oh, wow, look how far I've come. And that just does so much for self-esteem. And I had someone tell me, my coach told me actually the other day, and I posted that picture to you. He said, you posted on Facebook this something that happened a year ago, and I can't believe how much you have changed physically. You look healthier. And I did. I put those 2 pictures side by side, and it wasn't just looking thinner or looking stronger. It was that my skin and my eyes and everything just looked healthier. So do it, girls. Just do it.
So good. I'm going to ask right now, do I have your permission to post that photo with the podcast?
Absolutely.
Great. And I would say too, I think you were like the epitome of the book by the title Younger Next Year. So there you go. I know so many women on our community will ask, what do I do about my neck or my skin? And honestly, I'm not a dermatologist, so, I can help you a little and tell you that circulation will help. But Katherine is proof. And I think it was your eyes. Your eyes are so much more clear and bright and so many things to love. So I didn't want to make this podcast about it, but I do want to ask, so since you quit smoking and since you even if you know the benchmark for when you started triathlon training, what's been the change in your body weight or your percent body fat? Katherine, have you tracked that?
I am at about 20% body fat. I don't know what I was when I started, but I do know that I am down from the very beginning until now. I believe it's 35 pounds.
Tremendous. Awesome. And 20% body fat at age 61.
Yeah.
And I say that to say at 18, everybody listening, 20% body fat is something. Okay. So I don't say that for 61 in comparison to 51 or to 41. I say it in comparison to any adult individual, period. So phenomenal. And how do you feel?
Oh, I feel great. And I never was interested or trying to reduce body fat, or I just wanted to be the best version of me. And I think
I love that.
But I don't think I'm completely there, because I always felt, and I do feel, that there's always one thing more. There's always another race. There's always something else that I can do. So keeping everything, headed, moving forward into the future is where I want to be.
So fun. Thanks so much for joining me.
Oh, you're quite welcome. And thank you for having me.
Listeners, if you have a question for Katherine, she will see it. Leave it below the show link at flipping50.com/motivation. And join us on the Flipping 50 TV Facebook page. I will share the picture there too. And to get all the juicy access to the photo, the kind of before and after, the side to side, for at least where she is now, because wait until next year, we'll have her come back. Just visit that episode for today, again at flipping50.com/motivation. And if you enjoyed the show, please leave a rating in iTunes. And if you have an inspiring story or you want to recommend somebody, you can leave me a message at Flipping 50 and then share this with a friend to surround yourself with a supportive community of women on the same journey. What are you waiting for? Start Flipping 50 today.